Joining us now is Jonny von Wallström, the director of the Colonel of Africa.
So, do you have a specific custom picture setting that you prefer? This is for the Canon C300 Mark II. And do you experiment with that on your camera? Or do you just keep the standard Canon cinema profile? Usually it's the standard Canon cinema profile. I mean, sometimes for a project we might play around with it, but usually we use that. For this, I think, because this is a little bit hard to know, I think that we are using Rec 709 in the live stream, and then the one I record is the log profile from the Canon. But when I watch it online, it looks like it's not the Rec 709. So I'm not entirely sure. I should look into it, but there's not enough time in the world, I guess. So that is what I use usually. On the GH5 I usually use Vlog. I mean most of the time Vlog is really good. But when you shoot stuff that you want to live stream, it's not possible to live stream it in a certain profile that's different than log. I mean, you want it to look okay in the live stream, so you use the one that looks like you want it to. But then when you have it recorded in the camera, you want it to have as much dynamic range and as little noise and all those things as possible. So then a log profile is better to choose. Yeah, hope that helps. And this is an interesting thing. Any thoughts on the, this is the Canon camera, Canon XC10 and the XC15 as a complement for the bigger EOS cinema camera systems. I'm interested in it because in some situations it can be beneficial with a smaller camera, like the good old 5D Mark II days. I mean, I'm a big fan of the XC15. The only reason that I think it has some limitations is because you only have one zoom lens. Of course, it's a zoom lens. It might do in most situations, but it's kind of limiting still. Since I have a lot of lenses, that's why I have the GH5 instead. But if Canon would give me one, and you should, Canon, then I would try it out, and I would probably love it, I guess, because it looks like an amazing camera that just has some limitations that, you know, I could live with, because it's such a small form factor. It's like this big. I mean, I used it at the Hot Docs Film Festival in Toronto about, when was it? Like 2016. That's the only time I've held it. So it's like this big, basically. And it has a little handle. It's so ergonomically nice, I think. So for me, that camera is pretty much what I want, like form factor wise. It's perfect. There's nothing that comes close to it, because you have the handle, you have the super tiny form factor. The only issue that I have with it is, of course, the lens, but then also the display. I would like to be able to flip it so I can see myself like the C300. But of course you can put a monitor on it, but then I don't like the HDMI ports. So it's flimsy, so it's better to have SDI, and since it's more costly to put SDI in, they didn't. But I think because it's so expensive, like it's like almost like a 5D in price, I think they should have, they could have upped the price a little bit on at least the XC15 to include SDI. Because either they do that or they put their Canon thing, so you can have the Canon monitor unit that I have on the C300 Mark II. That would be fine, but they didn't. So yeah. And the XC10, it's a cheaper version. I mean, it's a bit limiting because of the bit rates and all those things. All right. Okay, let's see. okay, this is a bigger subject actually. It would be interesting to see in whole or even in part one of your commercials and any comments or info you would like to share. We've actually been shooting, like we put in our contracts when we do advertising nowadays that we can shoot behind the scenes. So for at least, I guess a year and a half, we've been shooting behind the scenes on most of our productions. Not all, because not everyone is possible, but it's becoming more and more serious, I'd say. So we're going to show much more of like the making of the commercials. I'm not sure if we will show so many of them, but we'll probably break them down and show them in some form. But I think it's more interesting to probably see how they're being made. I don't know what you think about that, but in our mind, it's more interesting to follow us as we do it and then see the final result. But maybe we can put it on our channel, maybe we can't. Usually we can if it's later than the release, so it's kind of limiting because they want to drive traffic often to their own channel, which I don't think is, doesn't really matter. People see it. People who see it here would probably be more loyal to seeing it here because they're used to seeing it here, and I mean that's just an advertising and brand ID they have. But I guess because they have their videos on YouTube, they want to have the traffic to the same channel, and maybe they get subscribers. Probably they don't. Probably they are a little bit wishful thinking there. But if we can do documentaries that are based around the projects, I think that would be amazing, because we have a lot of interesting stuff that we make, but a lot of it is also in Swedish, so a good way to kind of use that material is to put it in English and put it on the channel. And then, I guess that's that. And then there was a follow-up question to that. Another topic that might be about going full-time as pro. As one young fellow mentioned in this video, I don't know what they're referring to. Your advice of 6 months to a year's salary was great, but are there any other factors or questions? I mean, to go pro, that is. I think the really important thing to think about, besides earning a salary, is to probably have a plan for how you want to build your own personal brand. And I know a lot of people think this is really boring to hear, because building your brand might not always be what you dream about doing and all that. But I think the thing is, if you don't have a personal brand, you can't charge a lot of money. You don't have much to say in the projects. You don't have any trust. People tend to not trust people really quickly in the advertising world. So if you've proven yourself, it's much, much easier. So if you want to go pro, there's one way of doing it, which is just, knocking on doors and trying to get any type of work. And that might be, viable in some sense, but I think a more effective way is to produce a short that goes viral or goes to festivals, or even a feature film. Like for me, feature films has always made more sense because you have a bigger platform to distribute it. So even though, shorts can be effective, if you get Vimeo staff picked with a short, it's an effective way of getting your name out there. Mostly because a lot of the ad agencies, they watch this Vimeo staff pick section, so that's why it's so effective. But if you construct things and release a feature film, for instance, all the PR that you get with that project, it will raise the personal brand much, much more. But then it's also another way to do it is to try to get, even if you do it for free, you should try to get the right projects that are exactly what you want to do, so that you build a portfolio where you have the type of projects that is exactly what you want to do. You shouldn't build a portfolio that is stuff that you don't want to do. That's, you're just going to get that type of work then. So what you really should focus on is trying to build a portfolio of maybe, even one project is good. But if you have 3 to 5 projects that are really the essence of what you want to do, that is, the perfect way to then try to get new work. And then you need to research people that do the same stuff that you want to do and contact them and get them to see what you're doing. Because they get asked so many times about like new creators, new filmmakers and all that. People knock on the biggest agencies and their creatives' doors all the time, emails and all this type of stuff. So you should really be aware of like the competition is fierce. They're probably gonna pick somebody they know, or you have to have a brand name, a personal brand that's strong enough to kind of make it undeniable to give you work. And most of the time, the commercials are being typecasted with directors. So I mainly get work that is stuff that needs authenticity and looks good and is a smaller production, but not, a one-man band type of production. That was the last stage that I was in about 2 years ago. I was always a one-man band. So that's like going from one-man band to being a production company, and that step is one level, I guess. But for a long time I worked as a one-man band, and that's an easier way of getting fun work, but maybe not the best budgets. But if you're alone, then maybe you can do a lot with it. Today I usually have a gaffer and that sort of thing with me, so it's needed to have a bigger budget. But usually I don't prioritize, for instance, the audio role as much as I should, because I don't have enough budget. So instead I put it into other stuff. Yeah, okay. Another question we got before we went online was, it really hit home today watching your film about the professional dancer, how comfortable, honest and open they become with you. How much time do you spend with your subjects before even picking up a camera? I'm a big fan of picking up the camera straight away. You have to meet the person, you have to kind of make some sort of connection first, and they have to become comfortable. You have to introduce yourself and that sort of thing. You don't just throw it up. But in a matter of like 5 to 15 minutes, my camera is probably up. And usually I go in with the camera up so that the step to pick it up isn't so big. When I started out, I thought a lot about, like, you hear a lot of people that do documentaries that, it's intrusive to have this big camera and all those things. And for me, it has never been about like the size of the camera. I started making Zero Silence. No, that one. With just a 5D Mark II. And then I thought that, the camera was really important to be tiny, because the whole factor of shooting a documentary that's about a subject where you have to be, on the down low. You can't be out in the public shooting, because the activists that we were following was, they were followed by the police and the military and all that in Egypt and Tunisia. So in that sense, it made sense to have a small camera. So I always like small cameras, but I don't think it's about the camera when it comes to getting people comfortable. It's more about like how you meet the person. And I'm much more for becoming friends with the people that you follow, rather than seeing them as, subjects or people that you don't really need to have a personal connection to. That's the thing that I have like most issues with when it comes to like documentary filmmakers are often talking about like how they're worried about like big teams and all that. And I think it's much more about the relationship between the people that you cover. And with the Pearl of Africa, that was a big component that for me to come in and do a documentary about a trans woman in Uganda, coming from the outside as a white Swede that's straight, that is the first like red flag for her and for anyone who's in a community where they take care of their community. And the important thing there is probably much more about like becoming friends and really having the same agenda maybe, or at least you share some type of agenda. Because when you meet someone, and like Cleo, for instance, in the Pearl of Africa, she was worried that I was coming in, I was shooting this, and then I was going out, and that's it. But what we wanted to do was, because we had done Zero Silence before, I wanted to work closer to the activists to build a platform around the film. And this is beneficial for you as a director, even if like you don't think that it's important to be a good person, to kind of care about the people that you cover. Even if you don't think that, it's still worthwhile to really care about the afterlife of your film, because you can't stay active. Like for now, for instance, the Pearl of Africa has its own life. I've left it to Cleo and her organization to do what they want with it, and it's a much more it's a better way for the project, it's a better way for her, it's a better way for everybody, that once the festival's out, it's been released to whatever it's going to be released to when it's done with the cinema and Netflix and all that. It has a life still for many years, and it's better that somebody else does that than you that don't want to do it, basically. So I know that Virunga, for instance, the producer of that, was at a workshop with Andre a while back, and she was telling that they couldn't do anything because they got sued, I think. Or was it that they were worried about getting sued? I think it was because they were worried about getting sued and that it would be pulled out and all that. So instead of having a whole outreach campaign, which is normal for documentaries to get it out, what they did instead was to give it to organizations, and then they did whatever they wanted. They did the community screenings and all that, and it was much more effective in terms of getting the film out there. Of course, that film had its life either way. I mean, I think it was Oscar nominated, and it was Netflix main originals production. That was a doc, and I mean, it had a big push from Netflix. But besides that, they didn't do any of the afterlife work. They just left it to organizations. And I think that's an effective way to look at it, to just find partners that takes over. And if you have, to get back to the question, if you have that connection to the people that you follow that has some type of need for doing the film, it's much more easy to get them involved, and it's much more easy to get them to push for the project and to want to do it, because they have an agenda by themselves. Because either way, everybody has an agenda for making a film, so it's easier to include them early with that. Yeah, I don't know if that answers how to get them comfortable, but mainly it's about playing with pretty open cards in terms of agendas, and it's about meeting them more as friends and human beings rather than looking at them as subjects and all that. All right, so let's see. Okay, let's see if we can call a number here. Okay, I'm not gonna risk the internet, so let's try over 3G. Let me answer different questions. Do you ever do any time-lapse videos? Sometimes I do. Northern Lights, good to do time lapses of. Not so often though. It's not that I don't like it, but I just don't do it often enough. Sometimes I do it when I like put my stuff together, equipment and all that. Then it makes sense to have time lapses. Okay, this seems to be the wrong number. Let's see. Nope. Yep. Do you try aperture lens regain? I don't even know what that is. Do you try aperture lens regain MFT to EF? I don't know what that is. I have no idea. Nope. Blank. Do you sometimes have the feeling not being good enough as a creative? I mean, that's often the case when you compare yourself, I guess. I try not to compare myself too much, because that would be kind of difficult to do anything if you think about that too much. I think that's the main issue. I don't feel that often because I've come to a level in my career where I'm pretty satisfied with what I'm doing, and that has to do a lot with creative freedom, I think. When you have creative freedom, that goes for commercials as well as feature films as well as this channel. I've kind of come to a place where I can say no easily to people if I don't think that, I mean, stuff is right. I don't agree to do things, and then it's much easier to be satisfied with what you do. And I mean, often when you do commercials, I mean, a lot of people that I look up to are amazing, and I think they always do better stuff than me when it comes to commercials, and maybe true with feature films too. But a lot of that stuff also comes down to, I mean, how your situation is compared to theirs. Maybe they have a bigger budget for their project, so it's kind of difficult to compare it, because maybe they had 5 days to shoot the same thing that you shot in a day. So it kind of becomes difficult to compare in that sense. And with feature films, it's often the same, because it's not really that I compare my story or film as a whole, but I often compare how it was released, and I often criticize like, oh, this could have been done better. But it's not like I do it and feel less because of it, because I'm still facing like the reality of not having usually a budget that's big enough. I know most people don't have enough budget all the time. It's the issue that people have. Either it doesn't matter what level you're at, you still have too little money all the time. So everybody feels that way, that they don't have enough, but it's just a matter of just realizing that you just got to do everything that you want to do and got to push yourself all the way. If you do that, then it's fine. You don't think so much about not being good enough. And also it's about putting in the work. So if you do all that you can in terms of work and you try your best, then you shouldn't feel that way. If you didn't do all the work that you should have done, if you instead went and you played video games and you went out to drink and you went out to fuck or whatever, then that's probably a reason that you should feel that you didn't do enough, because you probably didn't, or if you procrastinate or whatever. Yeah. How much time does it take to master DaVinci Resolve software technically? I mean, mastering any software, it's impossible, because there's always new features, it's always evolving, your skill level is always evolving. So you never become a master at anything, I guess. But to be good at it and to have it as a software where you have control over the software, because that's usually what I look at it as being. I mean, editing is quite easy. You can do that by just editing a couple of projects. When it comes to grading, I think it takes much more time, because it's a very, very difficult thing to learn in terms of how subtle and small the things and the stuff that you're trying to do should be. So for the first level is learning it technically, of like, okay, so how do you do a window? Window is like a mask. How do you do a window, and how do you track that to a face, and how do you affect the color, only the red color, or only the light that's as bright as your face? I mean, those things, if you watch tutorials and then do a couple of projects, you can learn it, but you won't master it until you've done it for, I guess, those 10,000 hours. It takes a long time, but there's no other way to get there than to start doing it and doing it consistently. If you just do that and do a couple of projects, like in no time you've already learned enough to not feel, intimidated by the software, and then it takes not so long to learn it like fluently. I think DaVinci Resolve is really hard to kind of accept the node structure and all that, and with the grading. But once you get over that whole hurdle, it's pretty much like the Final Cut, for instance. Final Cut 10 issue that people have that's been editing on Premiere or Final Cut 7, to go to that timeline where you have things moving for you. A lot of people struggle with that, and I mean, it's just a matter of accepting it and then doing the best with it, and then you will become more efficient. But a lot of people just say, no, I'm not going to learn it. I'm not gonna learn anything new today. Never. I would never want to learn anything new today. And if you have that mentality, then yeah, good luck to you. How do you land your doc style commercial work? Stephanie. Long answer is, you do all the, or short answer first. Short answer is, you do the work that is exactly what you want to do, and you get people to see that, and then they will call you and you will get the jobs that you've always wanted. Long answer is that it's not that simple. You have to build a portfolio of work that kind of shows what you can do and what you want to do. So you should have the projects that are the projects you want to make. You should have done them already. So that's the issue with advertising a lot of the time, is that they will only get you to do stuff if you've done it before. Nobody's going to take a chance on you, pretty much. That's the difficult thing. So most people that are successful in the advertising world, they go out and they do their passion project. That inspires creatives, like creatives at agencies, to want to call them and work with them, because their work was so good that they inspired an idea, or they evolved an idea that they had, or it was exactly how they envisioned something, and this director here was able to capture that without knowing it. But that's usually how you get your work. But on a more practical level, it's about that, and it's about getting them to see your work. For us, like Pearl of Africa has a style that turned into that type of style, but not necessarily commercial doc work. But it was the like authenticity and the documentary style, but it was still advertising, like still proper commercials. So that was like the first step we went to when we did the Pearl of Africa. We got that film out there, we got people to see it, especially the web series, because the web series got a lot of PR. So we did a web series 2 years before the feature film. That web series got a lot of PR. We went to festivals with it. We went to like Pride festivals and all that. It got a lot of media attention, and that thing helped a lot to get people to notice the project. And then once the film came out, it was a boost that, oh, this is cool that you've made this film, pretty much. Now this, like another step of that is maybe trying to win prizes with the film, trying to get it all hyped up. But going from that, because that led to like authenticity type of work that was in a style of the film, but it was a lot of it was voiceover driven. A lot of it was the traditional type of commercials that you would see. But then we started making shorts, and we started to make the type of shorts that we wanted to make. I mean, I think the Born 980 something series that was on this channel, a lot of the vlog style videos that we did on this channel early on, and also one that we did during the World Cup in France. Those has led to work that are specifically commercial work. They've used our videos as references for their pitch to their clients. So for us, like this channel, of course, it's nice to build an audience, and it's nice to have a platform to have your work, but it's also a way to kind of showcase whatever you want to do. So we always try to do stuff that it's a mix of like learning and teaching stuff, and then it's also a side that's more like the mood films that we make. It's not necessarily for the community only. It could also be like to inspire creatives to hire us to do that same type of style. Maybe that wouldn't be me speaking or whatever, but that type of mood that is captured there is the type of work that we want to do. So that's a matter of getting that work out there. It's a matter of showing it to the right people. It's really hard to get people to, you know, if you send an email and send a link, that's really hard to get people to care about it. So the easiest way is to know them. If you don't know them, you can get to know them. You need to find out where they are and hang out somehow. But then you can also do it online. You can make sure that even if you take a cup of coffee with someone and then you add them on Facebook, then you have them, like if you have a page like we have, then you have them on a list that you can market to. So then you can know that they will see whatever you do. It's all those types of things. Like you need to think about like, how do I reach them? And you need to build a platform, how you can do that. And then of course, I've said it many times, but Vimeo Staff Picks is like creative's favorite platform to watch for new content and inspiring content. So that's a really good way to launch your stuff if you want to have work. And about Resolve, do you make editing from beginning to render in DaVinci Resolve? I do. Mainly I switched from Final Cut 10, and the big reason for that was when I was editing The Pearl of Africa, once you get up to, I've edited TV series for half an hour and it's been fine, but then when I got up to an hour or above, it took an hour to open the projects in Final Cut 10. And every day, you know, you don't want to shut the project down. You don't want to turn off anything. You want to be in the project. Because it took so long to open the events in Final Cut 10. And that just made me like, oh, no more Final Cut. I'm over. Because shorter projects is totally fine. I love the dynamic timeline or whatever it's called. So DaVinci Resolve, I switched to that. And I think they pretty much taken the best of Premiere and the best of Final Cut and turned it into one editing program that is, you know, also a grading software. And I had already used it for grading everything that I did, so it was an easy switch for me. Now it's still a bit unstable. It's gotten pretty good now, I think, with the new version, but now that I updated, all of a sudden a project just disappears and you're just like, what the fuck? It just disappeared. You can't find it. Now I have backups and all that, and I have also a good thing to turn on if you do stuff in DaVinci Resolve is to have the auto backup feature turned on. I have it for every hour, for instance. So then you have an archive which you can go back to, which was fine. So I, recovered it easily. But just the fact that it disappeared is so fucked up. It shouldn't happen on a software that just is released just by updating it. Of course, every update, as a professional, you know that you have to, back up before you do any updates. So I never update programs if I'm in a project, because you never know, maybe it crashes and you're screwed. So usually I do it in between projects. But then if I didn't have backup then, and because this project that I was opening was something that was archived and I had to get it up and change something and get a new master out, it would have been gone and I would have had to find a different solution. So back up your stuff, whatever program you use, you should back up your stuff. I guess the audio feature, it's still new in Resolve, so it's still evolving. It's pretty strong right now, but I think still have some issues. One thing that I discovered just today was an annoying thing, which is because you have timecode sync and you have waveform sync like all the other softwares, but you can't do it with more than one external audio source. Why would you do that? Now, often it's not an issue, but sometimes when you have two lavalier microphones that are recorded to two separate tracks, it is an issue, and that's not an uncommon thing to do, to record two separate audio tracks. So that's kind of stupid. Now you can get around that with using, for us, tentacle sync or pluralize, or there's sound devices, Wave I think can do the same. So in that sense it doesn't matter all that much, but I think it's an amazing program. I think it has everything that I want in an editing program because of the short way of going from logging everything, having the metadata organized in a nice way, editing it, having the grading, and then exporting, and also the audio, which is good but not perfect. But then usually all the versions that I do, like I export a master and then I do versions, usually in Adobe Media Encoder. That's usually my process. I can help you shoot back behind the scenes docs, Johnny. Dust Productions. Let me know where you're at, because I would definitely take people up on that. I mean, sometimes we go to places we don't know where we're going. We prefer to have somebody local that shoots behind the scenes. Sometimes we bring people that has, a production assistant or whatever it can be, and then they are also skilled enough to shoot behind the scenes, or they're even like the last project, which was a good DOP that was just doing production assisting. So that stuff looks great. But anybody that's interesting, let us know, and we will definitely take you up on it. Let's see. Okay. Why did this jump? Okay, there we are. How do you think the estimate for an editor? I don't really get this question, but how do you think the estimate for an advertising project? I'm guessing now, so I'll guess answer that it's the budget. I don't do it, my brother does that, but like the whole budgeting aspect of it. Usually he produces everything we do and he organizes everything. I guess that's your answer. Because I have no clue. I've done a lot of budgets, but before with feature films and all that, when I produced most of my stuff alone, but not anymore. Okay. So Daniel asks, I'm filming a daily like a vlog, and I'm learning while I'm doing. Do you have any tips or principles on how to use and view my questions to strengthen the story? Make it personal. Find a theme to work around. For instance, Gary Vee has his theme about entrepreneurship. I have my theme around filmmaking. Casey has his theme about being a creative entrepreneur, I would say. His stuff is more random too, but I think you have to find a theme. I mean, McKinnon is probably also about doing a theme around filmmaking, photography. I think that's the big thing is like make it personal. Think about like how, what type of theme would work for me to focus around, because you need to narrow stuff down as much as you can. I think it's really hard to do. It's really hard to do stuff personal if you don't work a lot with your craft. So you really need to like think about what stuff that is important to you. For instance, if you care a lot about cats, make it about cats maybe, or if you care a lot about filmmaking, make it about that. But usually when it comes to vlogging, like having an idea that's simple for you to realize is the most important thing. So either way, like looking at how Gary works, for instance, Gary Vaynerchuk, he has a whole team that films his daily life and then it's cut together. And I mean, that's one way of doing it. It's probably not viable for most people to do it that way. And if you look at how we make it, it's much more about like trying to find a practical way of shooting stuff that is interesting and that still makes sense and has a purpose. And I guess Casey works in a pretty similar way in terms of like looking at every day as a structured story narrative. So I mean, it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It has a mission that the vlog is based around. So you need to think about stuff in that sense, like package it as a mission, and it's much easier. Usually I do my tutorial stuff nowadays. We haven't done so many released yet, but we've edited a lot of them. So they're coming on Thursday and Friday first. But then those are often made also in a similar way as like Casey does his days where he has a mission. Our tutorials is usually based around a mission to talk about a subject, and it's often most interesting if I go out and I do something that has a way forward, rather than I just go and talk into the camera, because that can be kind of boring and stale. But if you do stuff while you talk about stuff, then it's more interesting. What I don't like about vlogs, that's my personal preference, is all this stuff that, oh, now I'm going and I'm doing this. Now I'm doing this. Oh, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this. I'm eating this. There's no cinematic quality in telling a story like that. A cinematic story is not all about having visuals that are slow motion and some music and all that. It's much more about telling a story with all the layers that the film medium has. And that means that you need to tell a story without saying things, like saying stuff straight out. If you read any book about storytelling, the thing that they will say is that you shouldn't say anything. You should be able to tell everything without saying anything. So I think that's the biggest thing that every filmmaker should focus on, is telling a story without saying things out loud. So for instance, if you have fiction, you shouldn't have two characters that say, oh, I feel so bad. Oh, can you help me? I feel so bad. It should be told through how they act. It should be told through the angles. It should be told through the situations, the locations. All those things are the film medium. It's not about what they say. So for a vlog, I think that if you tell a story that isn't about saying everything out loud, for instance, if you tell a story in words, that maybe is like our tutorials might be about like how to record sound, but then you do something else that has a story. And maybe that story is only telling a story about my personal life or whatever it is, like me chopping wood. I mean, that's enough to have more interest in something than to have just somebody talking about how to record audio. So that's, yeah, one long tip. Nicholas has watched Fire at Sea. Yeah, it's an amazing film. And then he recommends a film, Rescate by Mark Bone. Why do I know the name Mark Bone? Rescate. Mark Bone. Everybody should watch it, apparently. I need to see. Rescate. Mark Bone. Can you share your thoughts about one of my work? Send me your work and I can definitely look at it. We're probably looking at, like, in the near future to do consultancy sessions for anybody that's interested. What we're looking at is trying to, like, do more like solid type of consultancy, not the type that is just like asking anything. Like, this is more of a platform where you can ask anything. But the thing that we want to try is to have all of you send whoever wants to. I mean, it's gonna be a limited session and all that, but let me see what we had. I had some list here. Nope. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, so the idea has been to choose what you want help with, and for instance, that can be to develop a story or something else. But it will be based on you sending in, for instance, research and development that you've done, and then, for instance, you have a synopsis of a film project or something like that. We're not sure what it would be yet, but some form of consultancy where you have a project and we help you to develop that project. It could be early stage, it could be rough cut stage, it could be anything. It could be like, how do we release this? How do we release this project? Oh yeah, Mark Bond, that's why I know about it. It's Matty's, Matty, who I should plug, Travel Fields. He's shot this Rescate, I think. Yeah, he has. With Mark Bone. So I've seen it. Very good. I think I saw a rough cut of it before it was released, because it was longer. But I'm not entirely sure, because I've seen the rough cut and then I've seen this film and I thought they looked similar, so I haven't watched the rough cut. Yeah, anyway. Yep, let's go back to the questions. Oops, I shut something down. Okay, so here we go. Hey Johnny, I would say you have a very consistent style across all of your work. Is this something you've done intentionally or does it just happen? Any advice on developing a unique style? Thanks. I guess, like, when you do stuff for a long time, you kind of figure out what you like, and that's kind of what style is all about, I guess. To kind of figure out what you want to do. That's basically why everything looks similar, I think, because it's how I tell stories. I think a lot of feature film work has a certain type of style, but of course, if you look at the first film I made, Zero Silence, and you look at The Pearl of Africa, I think it's evolved because I've evolved as a filmmaker. So the first film was much more direct and raw type of filmmaking, but it probably had the same emotional type of strings to it, because that's probably the stuff that I'm interested in. And then if you look at the feature film, it probably has, like Pearl of Africa, it has a much more honed in style. Stuff is much more planned, and I guess I knew what I wanted before I started the film, but then you go on this project of doing it for 3 years and you develop stuff, but then when you get in the edit, you try to make it, you know, whole. Like the style usually comes down to having a pre-thought of what the style will be. So doing tests, for instance, before you go out and do stuff is really good, especially if you don't have enough experience. Figuring stuff out, but by looking at other people, for instance, type of projects. Usually that's a good way to hone in your type of style that you're going for. I mean, every project is going to have different type of styles. But I think looking at a lot of different type of styles and then picking what you like and then trying to have a mood board for what you're going for is a really effective way of staying true to that. So if you have on your wall somewhere a collection of images, for instance, this is how I want this to look, that will help you to stick to that when you go out and shoot, or when you plan things, or when you write things. Usually when you do commercial projects, that's what you do in a treatment. You put together, you know, your whole concept for the project, and then you have a whole storyboarded part of it, which is basically the treatment. All the other stuff is also treatment, but yeah, anyway, complex. But that storyboard is really where you can hone in everything. Before, you maybe only have like storyboarded stuff that you use to pitch, but then once you get to having a treatment, like everything that I do that's commercial is usually pretty damn close. Even though it's documentary work, it's pretty close to what the treatment is and what the final result is, because by now I've done it so many times, so I don't need so much like I don't, even though I leave a lot to like coincidence and chance, usually having it pre-planned still makes it like, okay, so as long as you've shot all this that you had an idea of in the beginning, it can only be better than that, because everything that's by coincidence will probably strengthen and make it more natural and more organic. So that's usually how I work. I have a pre-planned style that I like, and that can be like something that is impossible for you to achieve even, and then you need to hire or collaborate with a DP or somebody that can kind of make your stuff look like you want them to look, because a lot of directors would never be able to shoot what they want or envision. Oftentimes, like as a director, I can't even shoot all the stuff that I want to shoot, even though I worked as a DOP before. So it's knowing your limitations too, I guess, and working from that. Yeah, and then other stuff to develop a unique style. You need to do stuff that is personal, and you need to do stuff that is what you really like to do. That's the only way to develop your style. Yeah, make things personal. Okay, so let me see, how many more questions? Joshua Alexander, did you go to university? I'm probably going to study film production, but I want to end up as a cinematographer and editor. Yeah, any tips for starting off? I'm 18 at the moment and at college, studying media production. I think, like, I'm not a big fan of universities, and mainly that's because they are so far away from reality when it comes to, once you've studied and then you go out, it's really hard to get work still. But some universities are really good at helping you to develop a personal style and helping you to become a technically advanced, for instance, cinematographer or editor. And in that sense, it can definitely be worthwhile going. But I don't think it's the only way, and I don't think a lot of universities do not develop unique styles. What happens when you go to universities is that most people that goes to universities, they mesh into one type of filmmaker, and they make the same type of films. That's why everything looks the same when you look at stuff. And some people stick out in that. Some people won't, accept being turned into this. And they are probably the best ones. So if you're that type of person that will go into a university and be strong enough, like personally as a human being, to still do your thing, then it's a really good platform, I think, because you get resources, you get opportunities, and you get mentors and all that stuff. But it's really hard to get work and to live off your craft from going to universities if you want to go make films, for instance, because you're still gonna get out, you're still gonna do some assisting and that sort of thing, and that's gonna take a couple of years before you get a proper type of job. Maybe you can go into TV earlier, for instance, but it is, starting off as an assistant either way once you've studied. So that's why I think that most people that have talent or that have made some short films or know what they want to do, they would probably gain more from just going out and assisting somebody and making their films and having their style intact and having not be turned into this same type of director or cinematographer or editor. But with that said, a cinematographer and an editor is a craft, so you can actually get a lot more skilled by going to an education of some sort, because you can practice. So if you don't go to university, you need to be the type of person that will do stuff anyways and won't, accept not making films. So it depends. Who are you? Okay, final question. Can you make a tutorial on color grading? This is also Joshua. I will. I'm gonna try to make both short and long. Not sure when, but I know that I have a tutorial that is about grading really soon that I just shot like a week ago. So that should probably come out. But then I'm gonna make more tutorials later, and I think we're gonna do much more of that for sure. Okay, so everybody that didn't get their questions answered, I will try to keep these until next week. Thank you for tuning in. A lot of questions. Bye bye.